Surprised or skeptical about geographical mysteries and phenomena because more than 20 years ago, I witnessed a miraculous sight on Sea Mountain in Zhangjiago City, Hebei Province. At that time, I was studying in Zhangjiago and liked to invite some classmates to go hiking on the mountain on Sundays. Once, we came to the half slope of a mountain and saw three closely connected square caves with sides about 1 meter long, arranged side by side on the mountain. Curiosity naturally made us look into the caves. I don't remember the order in which we looked into the three caves, but I only remember that in one cave, there was a cold wind blowing directly at us. In another cave, drops of water fell into a small pool in the cave, and in the third cave, there was neither wind nor water, but the cave was full of ice blocks and ice edges. We stood at the cave's edge, using our imagination to speculate how such a strange sight was formed. It was late spring and early summer at that time, and the ice in the cave should have melted long ago. Where did the ice come from? Moreover, why were there no ice in the other two caves that were tightly adjacent? What's more puzzling was where did the wind come from in the cave? With doubts in our minds, we went down the mountain and asked a local person as if we had discovered a new continent. "Do you know there are three strange caves on this mountain?" He laughed and replied, "Yes, I know. One is called the Wind Cave, the other is called the Water Cave, and the third is called the Ice Cave. I knew about them since I was a child. This mountain is called Sea Mountain. If you kowtow in front of the cave, you will have sons in the future." Wow, it's amazing. Looking back, I wonder if my son is the result of those frequent kowtows at Sea Mountain. Sea Mountain seems to hold its own mysterious blessings, while Bermuda doesn't offer as much fortune. The Bermuda Triangle is called the Devil's Triangle, Death Triangle, Ship and Aircraft Graveyard, Black Hole of the Earth, and so on. So, what is Bermuda? What is the Bermuda Triangle? And why are there these terrifying nicknames? Bermuda is an archipelago of more than 360 islands located in the Pacific Ocean. The Bermuda Triangle refers to a triangular sea area that extends from Bermuda in the north to Puerto Rico in the south of the Caribbean Sea and west to the southern tip of the Florida Peninsula in the United States. The reason Bermuda is known as the Death Triangle is that ships and airplanes often mysteriously disappear in this area. Below, I have excerpted several reports for everyone to understand the mystery of Bermuda. How terrible and mysterious is the Bermuda Triangle? More than 500 years ago, the famous navigator Columbus had encountered a magical and terrifying natural phenomenon in the Bermuda Triangle. It was in 1500, Columbus's fourth trip to America, passing through the Bermuda Triangle in the Atlantic Ocean. One day, Columbus and his companions on board came out of the cabin and stood on the deck, enjoying the beautiful seascape here. At that time, the sky was clear, the wind was calm, and the sea surface like a mirror reflected the dazzling moonlight, and the waves stirred up by the bow of the ship looked like piles of snow-white pearls. The vast expanse of sea and sky, connected by water, made people feel soothed, relaxed, and in high spirit. Just when Columbus and his companions were intoxicated by the beautiful and charming sea views, suddenly the weather changed dramatically. In an instant, the sky darkened, the strong wind blew, and the sea water rolled up waves dozens of meters high, like water walls attacking the deck. At this moment, the sailing ship was like sailing in a canyon, almost unable to see the sun, violently tossing on the sea, and Columbus nervously commanded the sailors. They tried to stop at the nearest Florida coast. Although all the people on board worked together to turn the course, all the navigation instruments on board suddenly failed, and the sailors were dizzy. Unable to distinguish the direction, the sailing ship seemed like a wild horse out of control, no longer obeying the sailors' control, and could only drift. The people on board only hoped to keep the sailing ship safe and escape from the danger. Finally, after several days and nights of hard work, they were lucky to escape from the storm and everything returned to normal, and the ship sailed forward steadily. Columbus recorded this thrilling experience in his sailing log. Regarding the mysterious disappearance of ships and sailors in the Bermuda Triangle, the earliest recorded incident was in August 1840 when a French sailing ship called the Rosalie was found anchored in the waters near Bermuda. The ship had its sails up and was carrying intact cargo such as fruits and silks, but there was no trace of any crew members on board. The only living creature found was a starving canary. No one knows what happened to the crew or what caused the incident. In 1872, a similar incident occurred when a two-masted sailing ship called the Mary Celeste encountered trouble 100 nautical miles west of the Azores. The ship sent out a distress signal, and 11 days later, when it was discovered by others, there was no sign of any crew members. However, the dining table was set with bread, butter, and other delicious food. Some teacups were still filled with coffee and water, the clock was ticking, and a bottle of machine oil was found on the sewing machine. All of these indicated that the ship did not encounter any severe weather conditions. But how can these phenomena be explained? In December 1945, Captain Taylor led 14 pilots from the U.S. 19th Flight Squadron on a training flight with 5 Avenger torpedo bombers from the airport in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Taylor was an experienced pilot with 2,599 flying hours under his belt and should have had no problem completing such a training mission. However, when the squadron flew over the Bahamas base, suddenly received a call from Taylor. "My compass is not working. I am flying over land that is not connected." For the next 2 hours, radio communication was intermittent, but showed that they were flying roughly north or east. At 4 p.m., the command post received another call from Captain Taylor. "I can't figure out my position. I don't know where I am." Then the radio signal became weaker until it fell silent. The command post realized that something was wrong and immediately dispatched a seaplane to search. Half an hour later, people on an oil tanker saw a fireball, and the seaplane had crashed. In just 6 hours, 6 planes and 15 pilots disappeared without a trace, leaving authorities puzzled. The military decided to conduct the largest search ever, involving 300 aircraft and 21 ships, including aircraft carriers. The search covered every inch of the sea from the Bermuda Triangle to the Gulf of Mexico, lasting for 5 days, but still no trace of the 6 planes was found. In 1935, the sailors on the Italian freighter Rex watched as the American sailing ship La Dorada was gradually swallowed by the waves. However, 5 days later, they saw with their own eyes that the sailing ship was miraculously floating on the sea again. Another prominent example is the disappearance of the USS Cyclops, a U.S. Navy auxiliary ship carrying manganese ore, in March 1918. The giant cargo ship had 309 sailors and was equipped with good radio equipment at the time. Yet it vanished without sending any distress signals. In 1951, while searching for a missing military ship in this area, a Brazilian seaplane discovered a massive black object moving at an astonishing speed beneath the waters of the Bermuda Triangle. In February 1977, someone piloting a private seaplane over the Bermuda Triangle found that the compass needle was off by dozens of degrees, and the people eating on board noticed that their knives and forks had become bent. After leaving the area, they also discovered strong noise recorded on the tape of their tape recorder. A captain of the American Maritime Rescue Company once said that when he was passing through the Bermuda Triangle on a ship, the compass needle suddenly swung violently, and the diesel engine that was running suddenly lost power. The waves were turbulent, and there was thick fog all around the ship. He ordered the engineer to go full speed ahead, and finally broke through the thick fog. However, the waves outside this area were not big, and there was no fog. He said he had never seen anything like it before. In 1943, a Dr. Jusa, under the cooperation of the U.S. Navy, conducted an experiment using 2 powerful magnetic generators. After the generators were turned on, green smoke rose around the ship, and both the ship and the crew experienced some kind of stimulation. Some people recovered after treatment, but Jusa committed suicide afterwards. The result of the experiment was never published. In 1979, a joint expedition of American and French scientists discovered a huge underwater pyramid on the seabed of the Bermuda Triangle. According to photos taken by Charles Berlitz, honorary curator of the Miami Museum in the United States, this underwater pyramid is even larger than the Great Pyramid of Egypt. There are 2 black holes on the body of the pyramid, and seawater flows through them at high speed. The missing ships and planes all disappeared mysteriously without leaving any trace. Some crew members vanished without a trace, while the ship and other items remained intact. Why is this so? This dates back to 2 billion years ago, when the greatest creator sent many angels, super celestial beings, and Buddhas to Earth to create life forms other than humans. These angels built many life manufacturing laboratories, known as pyramids, on the 30-degree north and south latitudes along the Bermuda, Pacific, and Atlantic Oceans. After 500 million years of work, the projects were completed, and they withdrew from Earth. These areas were not seas at the time, but rather mild climate and spring-like land. In order to keep the secret, they treated these areas like children playing with mud, chefs kneading dough, sinking areas with pyramids to the bottom of the ocean, and raising the sea level to create land. The current continents were formed 1.5 billion years ago, and the Himalayas were also created at that time. Just as the pyramids in Egypt prevented others from entering, preventive measures were also taken in areas such as the Bermuda Triangle. As for the mysteries within, they can only be understood from the perspectives of space and time. Please refer to the Universe, Time and Space chapter. 36. 海市蜃楼，极乐世界的显现。36. Mirage, the emergence of the Elysium world. If I were to say that mirages are the emergence of the Elysium world, scientists, especially meteorologists and optical scientists, would surely scoff and say that I know nothing about the refraction and total reflection of light. Indeed, my knowledge of optics and meteorology is only superficial, and I dare not show off my shallow knowledge in these fields, for fear of showing off my skills in front of an expert or displaying low-level skills in front of an expert to impress them. But since I have a clear understanding of the origin of the universe, the origin of life, the origin of humanity, and the 36-dimensional spaces in my consciousness, I also have my own explanation for mirages. I hope that experts can further analyze them from different perspectives. What is a mirage? A mirage is the revelation of the celestials and Buddhas to human beings. It is the emergence of a drop of the scenery of the Elysium world of the 36-dimensional spaces in the human world. In other words, a mirage is the true scene of the existence of the Elysium world. Some people describe a mirage as elusive, ever-changing, seemingly real yet illusory, and like a fairyland. These descriptions are quite appropriate, especially the description of like a fairyland, which can be said to reveal the true scene of a mirage. Strictly speaking, a mirage is a fairyland, and the Elysium world of the West preached in Buddhism is such a scene. When people who are fated to see the vast mountains, boundless sea, towering pavilions and buildings, hidden city walls and castles, and peaceful mountains and rivers in the sky from places like the beach, desert, Gobi, and lakeside, they will definitely have an inexplicable feeling about the beautiful and illusory scenery in the sky. What is it? Where does it come from? Is it from heaven or from Earth? Scientists explain that it is an atmospheric optical phenomenon, the result of light refraction or total reflection in the atmosphere of different densities. More precisely, natural landscapes on Earth are illuminated by light, reflected into the atmosphere, and due to the drastic temperature changes in the desert or ocean, the local air forms different densities in the sky. When the reflected light from the object enters high-density air from low-density air, it refracts like a chopstick inserted into a water bowl, casting the natural landscapes of the Earth into the sky, and then a mirage appears. The explanation seems reasonable, but I would like to point out the following details and see how we can explain them. All explanations say that mirages are the refraction or total reflection of distant landscapes. I want to ask, what exactly is meant by distant? How far away is considered distant? Many sky appearances have been recorded. Have scientists found similar or alike landscapes on Earth corresponding to the distant mirages? What is the image formed after refraction, an upright or inverted image? If it is an inverted image, why is the image seen in the sky upright? If the image formed after refraction is upright, why are some mirages inverted? Do the reflected light rays enter from a rarer medium into a denser medium or from a denser medium into a rarer medium? In other words, do the light rays refract from the sky downwards or from the ground upwards? Objects on the Earth reflect light towards the sky only from below, so how can reflections occur from above to below? Of course, we can say that light rays undergo infold refraction in the atmosphere, leading to reflections from above to below, but this is only theoretical and does not work in reality. If it did, we would see mirages every day. Experts say that in the scorching sun of the desert, due to the low specific heat of sand, the temperature rises quickly. The temperature of the lower air near the sand rises very high, while the temperature of the upper air remains low. This creates an abnormal distribution of temperature. Due to thermal expansion and contraction, the density of the lower hot air close to the sand is small, while that of the upper cold air is large. Therefore, the refractive index of the air is smaller in the lower layer and larger in the upper layer. When light reflected from distant higher objects enters from the denser upper layer to the rarer lower layer, it is refracted continuously, and the incident angle gradually increases. When it becomes equal to the critical angle, total reflection occurs, resulting in a mirage. This theoretical analysis seems reasonable, but I have a question. If this theory is correct, then mirages should be seen frequently in the sky above deserts all over the world. Why do some deserts not have mirages for decades? Are those deserts not within the scope of this theory? Of course, experts can argue that the desert where a mirage occurs must have a special geographic and climatic environment. Without this special nature, even if there is a desert, a mirage will not appear in the sky above it. So, I want to ask, what are the special conditions that make a mirage appear in the sky above a desert? Which desert on Earth does not have these special conditions? As for the mirages that occur near the sea, experts explain it this way. In the summer, on calm and still water, the upper layer of air is heated and has lower density, while the air near the water surface is cooled by the water current and has higher density. When the temperature difference between the upper and lower layers of air is large and the density is lower in the upper layer and higher in the lower layer, light reflected from islands, towns, ships, and other objects on the horizon can be refracted or totally reflected up and down, thus causing a mirage. Yes, during summer, the air above the sea is prone to forming a density pattern of lower density at the top and higher density at the bottom. But what about autumn and winter? On December 16, 2002, the Shandong region entered winter. So why did a mirage still appear on the Penglai Peninsula? If the expert's theory is correct, then the air above the sea during summer should always have this density pattern. So why aren't mirages seen above the sea worldwide? In recent years, mirages have frequently appeared in the air above the Penglai Peninsula in Shandong. Some experts claim that this is due to the results of recent environmental cleanup efforts, with the air now being fresh and the environmental quality being high, leading to frequent mirages. This claim seems more like a politician's language rather than a conclusion from experts. If this is indeed the expert's viewpoint, then I have a question. When the Industrial Revolution had not yet happened on Earth, the air in the Penglai Peninsula was even fresher and of even better quality than it is now. So why didn't mirages appear frequently? Instead, they only appeared every few years. How does the air quality in Hawaii compare to that of the Penglai Peninsula, and why aren't mirages seen frequently there? Of course, experts will argue that the unique natural environment of the Penglai Peninsula is the main factor leading to the appearance of mirages, and other places do not have this uniqueness, making it less likely for mirages to appear. If this claim is correct, then I must ask another question. Since the Penglai Peninsula has a unique natural condition, shouldn't the appearance of the mirage be roughly the same each time? Why do the images of the mirage differ every time it appears? Does the natural environment of the Penglai Peninsula change every year? From the theory of light refraction, we know that when light passes through a medium with uniform density, its direction and speed of propagation usually remain unchanged. However, when light passes through two media with different densities at an oblique angle, at the interface where the two media meet, not only does the speed of propagation change, but the direction of the light also deviates. This theory is correct, but if we use this theory to explain mirages, it is not acceptable. From the perspective of the atmosphere, not only is the density different between the convection layer, isothermal layer, intermediate layer, ionosphere, and exosphere, but the density also varies within the same atmospheric layer. Therefore, when the sun shines on the Earth, there must be light refraction occurring, and just like how we see the moon in the water, we can also see many illusory suns in the atmosphere. So why can't we see them? The density of air is not only different during the day, but also at night. When the full moon hangs in the sky, we can see the mirage of the moon reflecting on the water. So why can't we see the illusory reflection of the moon refracted into different densities of air in the sky? My explanation for the mirage is that it's not a reflection of earthly scenery in the sky, but a distortion of time and space of the Elysium world, which is a deliberate arrangement by the greatest creator to indicate to humanity that your sky is not illusory, but another time and space, another world, and that you humans have a bright future. When I introduced the Elysium of the 36-dimensional spaces, I already explained that the 1,000-year world and the 10,000-year world are very far away, while the Elysium world is right here, and the entire universe of the Earth belongs to the Elysium world. That is to say, the Earth, the solar system, the Milky Way, the Rotary River Galaxy, and the Low Rotary Galaxy all belong to the Elysium world. Everything we see is a kind of illusory image. Mirages are illusory, transient beauty is illusory, flowers and trees are illusory, insects, birds, and beasts are illusory, rivers, lakes, and seas are illusory, the universe is illusory, and life is also illusory. Then, where is it not illusory? The answer is, the Elysium world is not illusory. Emptiness is not empty. Form is not real. The smaller the energy, the more it takes shape, and the larger the energy, the more formless it becomes. Great form has no contour. Why can't we see the Elysium world then? Because our eyes don't have that structure. Can we see ultraviolet and infrared rays? Can we see electromagnetic and biological waves? Can we see gamma and beta rays? We are in a wonderful world, Elysium world, but we only see less than 3% of the world around us. Why can't we see it? Because our merits and virtues have not yet reached that standard. This is like someone asking, why can't I stay in the White House, the Kremlin, or Zhongnanhai? Why? Think about it yourself. Here is some information that may help us understand time and space. On January 28, 1915, a Turkish army advanced towards the 60th position in the Gallipoli region. When they climbed up the hill, several clouds descended vertically and silently enveloped the hill. Several metallic beams of light seemed to shoot out of the clouds. Then, a miraculous phenomenon occurred. The soldiers, who were brave and confident, one after another stepped into the clouds and disappeared in the clouds. A soldier named Lekade saw this terrifying scene with his own eyes. He shouted to stop his comrades, but they seemed to be deaf and crazily entered the fog. After a while, the clouds rose slowly and floated away, leaving only the hill. The whole army disappeared without a trace. Where did they go? They entered the mirage. In 1994, an Italian passenger plane flying over the African coast suddenly disappeared on the radar screen in the control room and then reappeared after a while. When the flight crew landed at the airport, the duty officer asked what had happened during the flight and why they suddenly lost track of it. The flight crew was puzzled and could not figure out what had happened because their flight had been going well without any accidents. Later, someone unexpectedly discovered that his watch was 20 minutes slow, and upon investigation, it was found that all the crew members and 315 passengers on the plane also had watches that were 20 minutes slow. What happened during those 20 minutes? Where did they go? Why weren't they aware of it? And why didn't it show up on the radar screen? In the Universe, Time and Space chapter, I talked about how time is divided into latitudinal time and longitudinal time. Longitudinal time is the time of the material world, and latitudinal time is the time of the non-material world. Humans exist in longitudinal time, which is like the x-axis of a complex function, while latitudinal time is the z-axis. When a person or object disappears from longitudinal time, they enter the realm of latitudinal space-time. No matter when they return, it is still the same time point for them, but for us, it may have been a year, 10 years, or hundreds of years. The Italian plane disappeared for 20 minutes because it entered the realm of latitudinal space-time. For the plane and the people on board, it might have been just a blink of an eye, so they were not aware that they had disappeared. However, for the people in the airport control room, it was a full 20 minutes. What is the realm of latitudinal space-time? The mirage is an example of the realm of latitudinal space-time. When I was a child, my grandmother told me a story. One day, a woodcutter got lost in the mountains while chopping wood. He wandered around for a while and suddenly saw two old men playing chess on a beautiful hillside. He didn't want to disturb them, so he squatted next to them to watch. Everything was so peaceful and natural, but the only thing that confused him was that the leaves on the trees next to him turned from yellow to green, and then from green to yellow, changing colors from time to time. After a while, when he looked away and then back, The two old men were gone. He shuddered and suddenly realized that this was a place he was very familiar with from chopping wood before. He followed the familiar path home. When he arrived at the village, he found that his village had undergone a great change. He suspected that it was not his own village. He walked towards his home along the path he remembered, and everyone he met on the way looked at him with unfamiliar eyes. He didn't recognize any of them. He suspected that he had gone to the wrong village and asked the people he met about his old village. They all said that it was the village he was asking about. He asked if they knew certain people, but they replied that they were someone's grandfather or grandmother who had already passed away. When he asked about himself, they answered that he was someone's grandfather who had gone out to chop wood one day when he was young and never returned. Now let's analyze why the woodcutter got lost while he was chopping wood in a familiar mountain. This was because he suddenly entered a mirage, and the environment was no longer the familiar environment he had known before. Therefore, he was bound to get lost. Why did he suddenly understand where he was after shivering? This was because the mirage disappeared, and he stood in the place he had been familiar with before, so he suddenly understood. Why wasn't he disappearing together with the mirage, since he was fortunate enough to be in the mirage, the Elysium world? This was because his spiritual quality had not yet reached the standard of living completely in the Elysium world. Then why did he have to witness the scene of the Elysium world with his own eyes? This was because he was destined to, and the two old men playing chess were definitely his relatives and friends in his previous life who had come to enlighten him and make him understand that although he did not yet have the qualifications to live completely in the Elysium world does exist. He could realize this truth, laying a foundation for him to enter the Elysium world in the future. This is a story about time and space. The woodcutter entered another realm of time and space, and when he returned from latitudinal time, he was still himself, but hundreds of years had passed in the longitudinal time of the mortal world. Therefore, the mirage is just an emergence of the Elysium world. Those who see the mirage may not have entered that realm, but they have the fortune to witness the scenery of the Elysium world. The mirage can appear not only